What's going on, everybody? This is Laner. Welcome to the Laners College Football YouTube page. I'm rocking my Cats, the Panthers. Fun time of year for college football, but also for hockey. We got the Winter Classic coming up in Miami. Going to be exciting. Got a sweet backdrop behind me there, Notre Dame's stadium. As always, man, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. We do full-length podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, but give you additional YouTube content here. Hey, the first round of the playoffs are over, and we saw two really great football games. We saw two games with a little bit bigger spreads. So I wanted to get on here for a few minutes, and we're going to give you our full-length recap video and all that kind of stuff later with some of the other fellas, with Howie and Reagan and Johnny and maybe Eli. Merry Christmas to all those guys, and Merry Christmas to everybody tuning in on behalf of those guys and from myself to you, from the whole LCFP contributors to the LCFP Nation. But I want to get on here and talk about a little bit of a topic that's been thrown around out there, the G5 playoff. So right now, as it stands, there's 136 FBS football programs that all play for the 12-team playoff and various bowl games. But there's also the FCS schools that have their own playoff, and most of that is run like an NFL playoff where the higher seeded team is actually playing the game at their home field. One of the most exciting things about this 12-team playoff format has been the fact that the first 4-round games are played at home fields, and that was awesome for Oregon, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, and I'm blanking on the other one right now. Oh my gosh! But for these teams to get home first round games is just phenomenal. And now we have all of these other teams sitting around waiting. Ole Miss as well. Geez, Ole Miss got that home playoff game. So huge for those environments. Now there's been 8 total teams in the history of FBS D1 college football playoffs to get home playoff games, which is amazing because Notre Dame got one of those last year and played this year's number 1 seed Indiana in that game. So it's amazing for these schools to get this. But I wanted to talk about my idea for a G5 playoff and why I support it and why I think it makes sense without being a G5 hater. Because the problem with this whole conversation right now is people aren't even willing to really talk about it in a logical way, because there's so much emotion wrapped up in it. And that's probably a bigger problem with society right now, where you have keyboard warriors and people just have their belief and they're going to get mad at everybody else, or they're going to assume that if somebody differs from their opinion that they're just a hater. And that's not at all what I am here. I wanted again to point out the fact that there's 136 FBS teams in college football. Think about any professional sports league, obviously college, right, is unique in this sense. Like the NFL, the NBA, the MLB, all that kind of stuff. It's pretty much limited to that 30, 32 team range where there's professional teams playing for the same prize, a championship, whatever it's called in their league, right? The Stanley Cup, the Super Bowl, whatever, the World Series, all of those kind of things. So for college football, I just want to point out the fact that we are over 4x that size, 136 teams. And we all know historically that it's an extremely imbalanced field of teams. There's a reason we have language like P4 and G5, and I would even say P2 or Super 2, because there's different levels to this. So I actually think it is ideal, it is fair, it will be more fun, and all parties involved would be happier and better suited to have a separate G5 playoff. I've been very clear on the podcast, if you've ever listened, that right now I believe the 5+7 format is extremely flawed, and I would rather just see a 1 through 12, which would not exclude the G5, but it also would not give them a mandatory seat at the table. For example, right, 2021 Cincinnati, I believe it was, made the 14 playoff. Last year, Boise State was certainly a team ranked within the top 12. I didn't believe they should have got a first round bye, but I absolutely believed they deserved a seat at the table. That can be fine, and there can also exist a G5 playoff. I think a lot of the people that have a problem with the G5 playoff is they think of it like the NCAA basketball tournament. Hey, there's March Madness, there's 68 teams or whatever it is that play in that, and then there's this NIT where it's a national invitational tournament and we invite those teams to be a part of it. That is not at all a fair comparison to what people are trying to build in college football right now. Like, I think it's been overstated, but I'll say it again. There's a difference between being able to have an upset on a one-off game in football and also being able to make a run in March Madness in college basketball. Well, there's different ways to win basketball games. It doesn't just come down to speed and size. For football games, when an average offensive line's weight is 75 pounds more than another team's offensive line and defensive line and vice versa, and the average speed and size, whatever, that will play a massive factor. And there's levels to it where you simply cannot overcome that. And maybe we get a magical upset every once in a while, and it happens. Michigan over Appalachian State, Vanderbilt over Alabama, Boise State over Oklahoma, whatever. Fill in the blank of those magical upsets. But do we really believe that those teams can actually rattle off 3 or 4 straight wins over an extremely disparatable matchup to win a national championship? No, I simply don't believe that. And I don't believe that's anti-G5. I just believe that's the reality of what it is right now. So I think a G5 playoff would be incredible because you have teams like UNLV, Boise State, USF, Memphis, North Texas, JMU, Tulane, all of these incredible teams that if you want to make it 8 teams, you want to make it 12 teams, you want to do the exact same format as the current playoff, like, great. That would be really competitive football games. I would tune in. I would love watching it. And it would be against opponents that are comparable to your same level of football. And again, that's not saying the G5 is less than. It's just talking about reality of school size, of conference level of play, of school funding, of, hey, if we have a great season, we're going to lose X amount of players to the transfer portal. I just think this is living in reality. I also think it would do well with ratings. I think true college football fans would tune in and would love to see. Consider this. If we did 8 teams, consider these first round matchups. JMU versus UNLV. Memphis versus USF. North Texas versus Boise State. Like, there's just 3 matchups right there that I'm rattling off the top of my head that would be incredible. And then the winners of those games, like, we could see home playoff sites for them. We could see sponsorships. Like, what if how the main playoff right now has the Cotton Bowl and the Rose Bowl and the Orange Bowl and whatever, like, what if they were able to poach things like the Pop-Tarts Bowl, and that could be the semifinal of the G5 playoff? I imagine Pop-Tarts would be thrilled about that. They would have great brands playing in that game. There would be hype around it. Like, they could poach some of these big-time, fun bowl games that aren't the top 5, that aren't the Orange Bowl or the Peach Bowl, but that are a next level down, where the funding would be there, the investment would be there, the buy-in would be there. You wouldn't be worried about opt-outs or teams deciding not to play. I just think it could be so fun to have a separate G5 playoff. And I think the point of all of this, too, is that we're realizing that the P4 or the P2 is continuing to emerge into this. 50 is just an easy number to say, but like 50-team Super League, where the teams from the Big Ten and the SEC, they've shown that, like, any year now, like of Indiana this year, is a number 1 seed, undefeated team, won the Big Ten. 2 years ago, they were projected to be 17th in their conference, which is just insane that there's 17 plus teams in a conference. But it also shows you that in this new format, in this new landscape of college football, teams that have these fundings and these big schools, and with the availability of NIL and transfer portal, can have an insanely influx year and build on it. And they can be in the picture just because they're in that conference and have that ability. So I even think, like, over the last 15 years, right? Let's just pull 2 teams out of a hat. Auburn and FSU. Auburn and FSU over the last 15 years, like, I don't know their record off the top of my head across that 15-year span, but I do know that both of those teams have won a national championship in that 15-year span, which is just mind-blowing for a second to think about when Auburn and FSU the last 2 years have been terrible in the ACC and the SEC. But we know that there's enough talent there in those conferences at these major schools that have stadiums of 80,000 plus that the JMUs and the Tulanes and the Boise States of the world just don't have to be able to consistently have a chance, even when they're over a 15-year period, maybe a 500-ish team that could still have a national championship in there. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if I'm being clear on that, but yes, upsets are still possible. I'm not anti-G5. I want to see these matchups in the regular season. And if a G5 team is in the top 12, they can be in the playoff. By all means, if it's just straight 1 through 12 and there's no play-ins and there's no AQs and there's no guaranteed 5 conference winners, like, if you're in the top 12, you're in the top 12. Welcome to the dance. If you want to be a part of it, great. If not, and you want to be a part of the G5 playoff, that's also cool too. But let's just be honest, right? Both of the 2 G5 teams that were in the playoff this year, their head coaches were still coaching, but they were also already signed to be a head coach at a P4 program because the current landscape is the G5 is a stepping stool. If you look at even this past cycle, many of the head coaches in these new Power 4 positions came from the G5 ranks. Even Mike Norvell came from Memphis years ago. It's not anti-G5 to talk about reality. I love these G5 programs, and I want what's best for them, and I want what's best for players, fans, coaches, all of that. And I think for fans, a G5 playoff would be really fun. First round home games, semifinals and finals. If it's 8 teams, that's easy. If it's 12 teams, you can have 2 rounds of home playoff games where the top 4 seeds get byes and then they play a home game. So it'd be 8 different unique first round home locations, which would be so cool. And the semifinals and the finals can be these awesome bowl games, like the Pop-Tart Bowl, like the Duke's Mayo Bowl, where they say, hey, we want a primetime spot in the G5 playoff. I think networks would be excited about it. I think players wouldn't be opting out. It would be really fun. And obviously, if we could move the coaching carousel back a little, a team like JMU wouldn't be losing their coach, and their coach is already recruiting and in LA and flying across the country to prep their current team, but also recruit for their future team. It would be really nice for all of those things to happen. So I think ratings would be good. I think viewership would be good. So I think the backing and the financial stuff would be there. I think the sponsorships would be there. Like, even executives from these companies, I've heard rumblings that they are obviously worried about bowl season crumbling. So they would be all about the security of a G5 playoff where they get a special primetime opportunity. It'd be really cool, and I don't think it would be anything like the NIT whatsoever. I don't even think that's comparable. So think about Indiana and how they were able to do it this year, but that's just not replicable at a JMU, at a Tulane, fill in the blank. And Auburn and FSU, a team that was like really down this year and like one of them fired their coach, won a national championship within the last 15, 20 years because of the influx of talent that they have, the conference play, all that kind of stuff. So consider it, think about it. I'm a fan of a G5 playoff if it's done the right way. Thank you for tuning in to the Laners College Football Pod. We appreciate you being on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe to get the latest videos, and Merry Christmas. We'll be back soon with more videos on the next round of the CFP.